What comes to mind when you hear the phrase third-party GameCube controllers? My guess is probably nothing too good. Mad Cats, Dead Zones, breaking within 3 weeks, or all of the above. If you've been with my channel for a while, you probably know that I have a pretty strong hatred towards third-party controllers. And while that opinion holds true for most third-party controllers, there is an exception. That being the GameCube controller made by Hori, or as is so elegantly described on the back, Hori Gamecube. Now that broken English paired with the fact that most people probably have never heard of these is due to the fact that this was produced and sold only in Japan. You might have heard of the company Hori. They produce third-party peripherals for a variety of consoles, pretty much everyone that's been out there. If you're a Pokken player, you probably already know they're the company that was tasked with making the official controller to be used on the Wii U for Pokken. Some of you may also know that they created this, the Hori Pad for the Nintendo 64, which is widely regarded as the best third-party controller made for that system. The point being that Hori knows a thing or two about making good controllers. It seems that Hori has a pretty special relationship with Nintendo, producing these high-quality controllers with material that basically parallels Nintendo's own peripherals in quality. Overall, this is a very impressive controller. If you came to the video to just figure out if this is a good controller or a bad controller, the answer is yes, it's a great controller. Unlike basically every third-party controller out there, you have full control of movement, all the button presses feel solid and have great feedback, and most importantly, it's extremely durable. Everything about it feels solid. You don't even have to just take my word for it. A while back, Mike Hayes actually posted a tweet showing a whole lot of controllers that he was willing to sell, and a few Hori pads were in there. When asked about him, he said that they are very good controllers, they just feel kind of weird, and I couldn't agree more with those two statements. This controller behaves pretty much like an official Nintendo controller, even having certain problems such as dashback and inconsistent shield drops. But the main quirk just lies in its shape. You can see it has a very unique design having 2 Z buttons, and the back part of the shell is actually specifically molded to fit your hand very well. And when playing with a stock grip, it's very comfortable. Now if you play with a claw grip like me, it feels just a little bit weird. The front facing buttons feel just a little bit too close together, and the gap between them and the Z button and the R trigger feel a little bit too far apart, but I'm sure that that's something that I'm just not used to, and I believe that is because the back of the plate is just not shaped to comfortably accommodate a claw grip. In general though, I believe that whatever grip you use, you're not going to be used to this controller at first. I know this firsthand because the only other person I know that owns this controller is one of my friends at Rutgers Esports, and whenever he lends out his controller to anybody, it always just feels extremely weird to them. But shouts out to him for being able to play pretty damn well with it, hitting all the tech skill and having control of his character just as well as just about any other Melee player I know of, showing of course that yes, it is possible on this controller. We're gonna open this controller up to see just what lies beneath it. Maybe some parts are compatible with an official Nintendo controller. Hopefully you guys find this interesting or useful, just being able to see what the inner workings of this thing looks like. So let's take a look inside one of these. Thankfully, the Hori Gamecube controller, just like many third-party controllers, uses Phillips head screws on the back. So the only tool you'll actually need is a Phillips head screwdriver. On the back you'll find 7 Phillips head screws. I guess they really just didn't care about people opening up these third-party controllers. And just like Nintendo GameCube controllers, all the screws on the back are the same length, so you don't have to exactly keep track of where each screw goes. I have to say though, taking out all the screws on this controller are actually much easier than taking out screws on the GameCube controller by Nintendo. Alright, lifting the back here, you can see the insides of the controller. Taking a look at the back, it's actually quite simple. It of course greatly mirrors a regular GameCube controller with having 2 triggers that are covered by this little plastic shield held together by 2 screws, also Phillips head. And if you remove this little back plating, you can take the trigger out, much like how you can with an official Nintendo controller. The trigger itself is shaped differently compared to a regular Nintendo controller. You might be able to tell how flat the Hori's triggers are compared to the GameCube controller, and in general they have very similar shapes, just ever so slightly different. Conceptually they work the same. They have a spring very similar to that of a Nintendo controller. Now even within Nintendo controllers, the length of the spring that came in a controller actually varied, so this does seem to be something that you can swap between controllers if you so desire. Personally, I even cut my springs in order to have less tension in my triggers, so depending on the tension that you want in your triggers, swapping out the springs with these might be good if you want less resistance because they are very squishy. The base pieces for the triggers are different and they are not compatible with GameCube controllers. However, much like most things in a controller, they are shaped roughly the same and serve the same purpose. The cool thing about this controller is that it does have the trigger brace, so besides finding one in an older GameCube controller, you can find these in Hori controllers. Last but not least, because they are so similarly shaped, you can actually put your trigger plugs in these triggers as well. The purpose of them, of course, to shorten the length that your trigger has to travel in order to count as a hard press. And just in general, this is what the back of the shell looks like. Now I gotta say, the front part is pretty interesting. Just flipping it upside down and shaking it, you're not gonna get anything that falls out. And that's because screws actually hold this board into the shell. Now you can count in plain sight 5 screws on the back of the board, but you only need to remove 2 of them to take the board off of the shell, which would be this screw and this screw. The other screws seem to hold in the control stick boxes. Removing this first screw loosens up the C-stick, and although all the screws for the back plate of the controller are the same length and width, the screws that go into the board are actually the same screws that hold the triggers together, and these screws are different lengths and widths compared to the screws that we took out in order to open up the shell in the first place. So just keep that in mind. And the board's got a very interesting shape to it. You can see the rumble pack here, the sliders for the triggers, and of course the dual Z buttons. Removing the second screw right here will take the main part of the board out of the shell. And now by removing this cable, you'll be able to pop the board out. Now you can see from the Z button that fell that the Z buttons are also shaped very differently compared to Z buttons you'll find on a Nintendo controller. This one having a rubber piece, generally being shorter and having 2 hinges. You can also tell how funky the rest of the buttons are. Instead of having a button pad that's a single piece, Hori decided to give each individual button its own button pad, meaning that these buttons are very weirdly shaped. They of course have the hole for the button pad to rest in. So obviously any third-party buttons or any replacement buttons will not work on this controller. The Z buttons have their own little slot where they lock into. And then we have the start button. If you've ever opened up a Nintendo 64 controller, the button pad for that start pad and this one look very, very similar. The start button is actually massive compared to the start button from an original Nintendo controller, and that one rests right in here. Each of the buttons have their own little cutout, and of course the D-pad, which is also very different. The button pad for this is in one piece. However, as you can see, the D-pad is shaped differently. Now onto the actual board itself. It shares a common theme of this controller, which is having a lot of things have the same purpose and look when compared to a Nintendo GameCube controller. However, everything's shaped just slightly different. You can remove the C-sticks and the control sticks in the same way that you would with a GameCube controller. I'll show you guys the measurements I got for the heights and the widths of both of the sticks that come on the Hori pad. And if you'll notice, the funniest thing about this controller is that the boxes for the control sticks are actually upside down. Now, I don't know why, and we'll probably never know why, but for some reason Hori decided to take the control stick boxes that you'd find on a GameCube controller, you can tell by the little notch on the top, and they put them on the board upside down. Now, of course, I am no expert on this. I don't know the full background of this controller, but they do seem to share the same control stick box, which does explain why this controller performs so well and why its control sticks are so accurate. They're using official Nintendo parts for it, as well as where the Z button goes. As a result of them being the same, you have the same issues, like I said before, with dashback and shield drops. I'll show you the southeast and southwest gates on this specific controller, just to show you how similarly they behave. I can't get over how cool that is that this controller actually has 2 Z buttons. So to break it down, what do I think about this controller from a consumer's perspective? You can find them for pretty good prices online at places like eBay. There you can see all the colors that it comes in. You can find ones that are in better condition than this. And the prices are pretty comparable to a lot of GameCube controllers that are on there that are also used, because you can't really find this new anymore, obviously. Now, as far as third-party controllers go, this is by far the best one I've ever used. It plays really, really well. You have full control of your character no matter what game you're playing. Now, it does feel completely different in your hands compared to a regular GameCube controller, obviously. And having used a regular GameCube controller my whole time playing Melee, moving around with my characters felt very awkward with this controller. I didn't have too much control, and that wasn't because of the controller being inaccurate. It was more just me not being used to the controller. With enough practice, you could be as good on this controller as you could with any other controller. Maybe even better if you take advantage of the 2 Z buttons. Taking a look at the C sticks and the control sticks, they are molded upside down, not that you could even really tell besides having the C upside down. But aside from looking very similar to Nintendo control sticks and C sticks, they are shaped differently, which is actually my biggest gripe with this controller, because as you can tell, the control stick is very worn down and there's no real good way to replace it. So if you want to replace it with an identical copy, you're going to have to buy another Hori controller and find one with a control stick in decent condition, take them apart and swap them. Now, luckily there is an alternative, the control sticks on Nintendo nunchucks, that being because the control sticks and C sticks are too tall. So if you put a regular Nintendo control stick and C-stick in these, they will ride really low on your shell. Now you can get away with that with C-sticks, but for control sticks, they will get stuck. The control sticks on Nintendo nunchucks are actually tall enough to comfortably fit on the board in the shell, retaining their full range of movement. The reason why a regular control stick won't work is due to how short it is. The control stick is actually not tall enough to cleanly stick out of the top shell without getting stuck. The nunchuck controller is actually much taller, as you can see. Pretty comparable, if not actually taller, than the regular Hori stick. So if you use the nunchuck stick on the Hori pad, it will stick out of the shell the perfect right amount, never getting stuck. Alright, that's just about all there is to say about this controller from the insides to the outside. I gotta say, this is just one amazing controller. If you're just getting into Smash, or you want maybe just a fresh feel for a controller, or you don't mind getting used to a new shape of controller, this is a pretty solid alternative to your conventional controller. Their prices are very comparable to those of a GameCube controller, although they do fluctuate just a little bit, so you can sometimes find these for a very low price. And for their quality, it's a great pickup. So now hopefully you know just a little bit more about this controller. If you found this video helpful, please consider liking or subscribing. If you like esports content, primarily Smash content, I recommend following my friends over at Rutgers Esports and Smash Studios, both looking to put out great stuff in the future. Thanks for watching, guys. This has been Zenith, signing off.